the ability of this range of radiation to damage DNA is still a bit perplexing as to how that happens, although the free radical possibility is perhaps the best one that's been put forward so far. But that's not clear. And then the decrease in sperm counts. Just to make it clear, the reason it was focused on in men, these were people who were keeping their cell phones in their front pants pocket, and therefore fairly close to where sperm production goes on. The epidemiologic data, which I reviewed very carefully and talked to various experts in the field, overall don't give a very positive signal. But what has really struck me is that in virtually every study that had a significant number of subjects that were examined that had been using cell phones frequently for more than 10 years, there is a signal about an increased risk. That led me about 2 years ago, when I was the director of the University of Pittsburgh Cancer Institute, to send out an advisory memo to our faculty and staff saying, I've reviewed these data recently, I've become concerned, and although it still is unclear, I advised them to follow what I think is a very important principle, namely the precautionary principle, that if you don't know and there's some concern, do something to prevent rather than wait until there is conclusive evidence. So I sent out an advisory to our staff with 10 points that was nicely summarized by Devra in her talk and in her book, basically to keep the cell phone away from your head. And particularly I was concerned because of this increased absorption in kids to really avoid or limit the use of cell phone by children. Since I put out that advisory, there was a publication from a very distinguished epidemiologist in Sweden that followed teenagers who started using cell phones in Sweden and had used them for 10 years or more. And for that group, there was a 5-fold increase in risk for brain tumors compared to ones that didn't use it. And that particularly just increased my level of concern. So I really applaud Devra for sounding the alarm, writing the book, and doing what she can in a variety of ways to help prevent a potential calamity. I'm a clinical oncologist by training, and I feel very strongly that this is a terrible disease, particularly malignant brain tumors. And should we wait another 10 or 20 years before it becomes conclusive to send the alarms out about how it should be used, or rather to take simple precautions? I strongly believe that what I did a couple of years ago was the right thing, and I feel even more so now than I did at the time that I put it out. So I also applaud Andrea Bolin for taking this into the legislative arena, and I hope you get it passed soon.
Now, Andrea Bolin is a MENA and fiercely independent, and really has been phenomenally effective in taking on this issue. And we met a few years ago, and I think I can safely say at this point that she's done more to bring this issue forward in the political arena so that people in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, Philadelphia, Burlingame, California, and San Francisco are all looking to the concerns that she first raised. And I'm going to ask her to tell you a little bit about what she did, and then we'll have an opportunity for some questions. Which one? Oh, your warning slide. Sure. I'll go right back to it. Yeah.
Thank you, Devra. Thank you, everyone from Georgetown University. This is really a wonderful day because this book, when you read it, you'll see is absolutely remarkable. We have here a scientist who is willing to risk issues of her own career to speak out on subjects that others have not had the strength to do so. And she tells the story for both scientists and average people, so that we read the stories of some of these, the people who have been important in this whole research and issue-raising realm. But she tells it in such an interesting way, such a compelling way, and delivers a lot of information. So I think she's really done a wonderful, wonderful service for all of us, because most of the folks that I associate with, like myself, are not scientists. We're not experts. I am a legislator from Maine, and I've been concerned about health and wellness and prevention and what can we do to not have problems. So when I got onto this issue and started realizing all the information that was out there, I was astonished. And I started talking to people whose names were actually on these materials, and I felt like I just stepped into another world, because most of the folks I knew nothing about this whole issue. And yet here were these stellar scientists and intelligentsia who understood it down to the last electron. So obviously I wasn't going to understand things to that degree, but I represent the people of a town in Maine. Name is Sanford. It's an average town, working people, some upper class people, some people that we have to help along. It's just a regular Maine town, former mill town. And they're good people there. They care about their families. They turn out for all the events for their children. And these are the people who have elected me to office to represent them. When I discovered the kind of information that was available from the work that these scientists had done, it just was so surprising to me that it had not been on the public radar screen at all. And beyond that, that government had not taken any steps at all to tell us, to warn us. So it became apparent to me that it would be very good to just put a warning label on these devices that everyone is using. This is the warning label that we came up with. It's pretty simple. It says what the case is, that they emit electromagnetic radiation, exposure may cause brain cancer, and it's smart to keep it away from your head and body. That really astounded people when they saw that. What? This can't be. Everybody uses cell phones. Certainly we'd know. And that wasn't the case. But I brought this warning label and I asked for it to be passed by our legislature. And we had a short session and it didn't get passed. But the amount of information that got out as a result of that, it was covered in all the states of the Union and in other countries. People were contacting me. The bottom line to me is, as a representative of Maine people, of anyone, that we can't go on not telling our people about this terrible danger that they are inviting by putting cell phones to their heads. And young people planning to have children not understanding that if they hold that cell phone close to the area where the fetus is growing, could damage that child before it's even born. And this is the kind of study that we're seeing. Now, in Maine, it's a rather small population state. We've got 1.3 million. You could fit them in a corner of D.C. any day of the week, I'm sure. But that's still a lot of people. And out of that population, about 950,000 or more have cell phones. I'd venture to say that probably not 5% of them had really focused on this issue until I brought it forward with the help of all these wonderful scientists that appeared at the doorstep and really with stunning testimony to give. But 750,000 people, 950,000 people using cell phones without knowing that they could be damaging their own brains and those of their children and their other loved ones. We have 15,000 live births a year in Maine. That's a small number for some places. 15,000 babies being born and their parents not knowing they could be damaging them by holding them in their arms and holding the cell phone at the same time. These are the things that concern me. And when this legislation was brought to Maine, I conferred with the Attorney General's office to see if the bill was written in a proper way, and they found that it was, and we had some discussion. And what I was told at the time is that the industry had already been to see them and had let them know that the state of Maine would be sued if this legislation passed. This is a multi-trillion-dollar industry threatening one of the smallest states in the Union. That didn't affect the thinking of the Attorney General's office. They would back and they would defend it in any sense that they needed to. But that's what we face, and perhaps for that reason it's not surprising that the bill didn't pass in its first pass. The governor let it be known right off that he didn't want it to pass. The director of the CDC let it be known that she didn't see that there was anything to it. After all, she'd studied it for 3 weeks. You know, what problem could there be there? But this is the problem that we have today. Good people not speaking when they see that there's a problem, or not being willing to accept the fact that, as Dr. Herberman says, we need to exercise the precautionary principle and use our brains to figure out that maybe it's sensible to get the information out there and let people be cautious in their use of cell phones. Thank you very much for permitting me to speak.
We're ready to start our question and answer period. We're going to have about 15 minutes, and then, as we've mentioned, the books are available for purchase, and Dr. Davis would be available, I'm sure, for a short conversation following the talk, too. The procedure we're going to use is that I have a mic here, and because this is being taped, if you'll raise your hand and we'll recognize you, we'd like you to please state your name and your affiliation before you ask a question of Dr. Davis.